KEXP's Fall Fun Drive is right around the corner, so I want to remind you real quick that this podcast, everything that the station does on air, online, and in our communities is only happening because the people who listen are the ones financially supporting us. Without you, we can't bring you these conversations with and about the musicians you love. To the thousands of amplifiers who already support KEXP on a monthly basis, thank you so much. If you're not, please consider giving now at kexp.org/deeper. And thanks for listening.
Part of what I love about Seattle is that everybody is in their basement making their own art. There's nobody telling you what to do.
This is A Deeper Listen from listener-powered KEXP, the show where we talk with musicians about the thoughts and the experiences that shape their music. I'm Roddy Nickpour. Admittedly, today we're not talking with a musician, but she is a photographer who was part of Seattle at a really pivotal time in the scene here. Her name is Bootsy Holler, and she's releasing a book next month called Making It, an intimate documentary on the Seattle indie rock and punk scene, 1992 to 2008. Those were the years when Bootsy was living in the city, and she captured intimate moments with the bands that you know and love, from Nirvana to Fleet Foxes, to even deeper cuts, artists who are so niche that I can't even find their music to share it with you. Bootsy was there, documenting this monumental time in music history. It was also a monumental time in her own life. Bootsy not only reflects on the scene that she covered, but also a bit about her own life as a photographer trying to quote-unquote make it in this business. Also, her main companion the whole time was her dog, Pony, and that's just really cute. I got to speak with Bootsy about her work while she was visiting the San Juan Islands, and she starts by telling us a story of how she ended up in Seattle in the first place.
I moved to Seattle in 1992 from college. I went to school at Western Washington University up north near the Canadian border, and I grew up in Eastern Washington. I was so ready to be out of Bellingham and in Seattle. At the time, my boyfriend lived in Seattle. He was in a band called Jessamine, and it was him and his brother Rex. It was Jay and Rex. They kind of brought me into the scene, seeing a lot of really small bands and just kind of walking in the back door with those guys.
Was there any part of you going and taking photos of these scenes that you were already getting into something that was going to be huge and important? Or was this so like grassroots still that you were like, I don't know, these are just my friends?
Totally that. Part of what I love about Seattle as an artist is that there's nobody telling you what to do. When you're in a city like New York, what is hot, and you have to be doing it. Like if you're not following what it's supposed to be, then you're not cool or you're not in. But in Seattle, everybody just is in their basement or in their room making their own art, and they're not being influenced by anything. And it's coming from a different place. And that has a really different feeling when you're creating art, that you don't have any pressure from the outside pushing on you to make something that everybody wants.
You came in, again, 92, Seattle was getting on the map, and it was getting maybe simplified, oversimplified, but you were just out here hanging out with your friends who happened to end up being these people who we all know from, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, whatever. Like, what is something that people, when they look back, they might think something about the scene, but in fact, it was not that way that people assume?
Because of the quote-unquote grunge that everybody latched onto outside of Seattle. I mean, I never used that word. Nobody in Seattle used that word. Sure, there's people that say, oh, it came from this place or that place, or Megan Jasper said it, or Mark Arm said it, and you could go down a huge rabbit hole. But that wasn't what Seattle was. I mean, there were punk and garage bands making so many different types of music.
That's funny is that we had our episode of the Cobain 50, Mudhoney was on that list, and the grunge, when you phrase it like that, makes me think of that episode. And in fact, in your book, you have this photo of Mudhoney outside of KEXP's studios from 2006, and you address it in the caption that if you go down the rabbit hole, Mark Arm might be the first one who used the controversial word grungy to describe their band's sound. But to your point, right, it's not so black and white as to who made that word up. And more to your point, that was never really like the way that it was described internally, I guess, in Seattle, right?
Right. They were garage bands, and they were punk and rock with a twist. They were like, how can we tweak it or make it different? And that also goes back to the not having to follow rules. We're out here doing whatever we want, and nobody's looking over us. And either people like it or they don't. But as long as the musician likes it and feels good about the art they're creating, they're going to go out there and have a good time on stage and put out a good show.
To quote you in the book, the life was dark days, the rain, the dampness in your bones, the thrift shop flannels, supported local venues, lived with a band, drank the best coffee, shot heroin, got pregnant, and had an abortion, not necessarily in that order. Those are some of the things that you said you did. It sounds like pre your son, yeah?
Yeah, and that, like, I'm not a writer, okay? But that came to me like a poem, you know? This was crazy times, and I was just doing what I had to do to survive. And I was around people doing drugs, and I did make choices to take care of myself in certain ways and not decide to not have a child when I had a heroin addict boyfriend. You know, it's like, those are good things. And kept moving forward as an artist and got to where I am now, which is amazing to see. Like, not everybody tells their dark stories. And I wouldn't say I have a dark story, but there was, you're in your 20s.
Yeah, but it's dark or whatever you want to call it. You're being vulnerable. There's a lot of moments in this book that feel vulnerable. And one of them that stood out to me was with Celine Vigil. Mm-hmm. One of the more vulnerable photos in this is she's your first portrait subject of someone who you didn't already know. The one in the book, she's topless. And I'm just curious, like, how did you, leverage your art in a way to gain the trust of someone like her to be your first portrait, your first subject for a portrait?
Yeah. I'll never forget this moment with Celine.
And I should say, Celine Vigil, who's the vocalist of the band 7 Year Bitch.
Yes. And she was hot. Like, 7 Year Bitch was hot. He said I did something really stupid today. I saw her at a show, and she wasn't singing or anything. I think she was just there. And I was like, I want to photograph her. And I just worked my way close enough to her to introduce myself. And I just said, I'm a photographer, and I would love to do a portrait with you if you're interested. And she just looked at me and was like, yes, I would love to. And at that moment, I was just like, boom. Wow. This changes everything. I am a woman asking a woman to do a portrait.
Someone else, I guess, who's a big part of this book is Pony, who was your dog throughout Seattle. And Megan wrote it this way in the foreword. She said, "The Deftones and Blonde on Blonde let down their guard in the presence of Bootsy's dog, Pony." So, I'm curious, like, what effect did Pony have on people in sessions or just between sessions? She was your companion the whole time.
Yes. Listen, this dog went everywhere with me. Anybody who knew me knew Pony. And sometimes my friend Chris Roberts, who owned the Alibi Room, he would watch her for me sometimes, or Mike Squires would watch her for me. And then people would be like, oh, I saw a Pony down at the Alibi Room having dinner, because I was out of town or something. Like, she had her own life in a way. But when you bring her on, like to 107.7 when I was shooting in Bainbridge or whatever, wherever that was, Kitsap County Fairgrounds or whatever, with the Deftones. People these guys are out on tour and they miss their animals. I had so many pictures of bands with her. And it was her job. But she just went and sat with them. She was just also a very, intuitive animal who was comfortable with people more than even dogs.
There's lots of bands in here who I've never heard of, right? But like, if you could just think of one or two on top of your head where it's like, man, these guys who I photographed never made it big, but they really should have. Like, who's one or two bands that you photographed in this book who you're like, everyone needs to know who this band is?
Well, I always go back to Carrie Ockrey. She's a phenomenal singer. And she was so close so many times to blowing up with the bands she had, Hammerbox being one of them.
Change the channel and now I'm banned for you.
Why she never blew up, I don't know. And that's part of where making it comes from. Not everybody makes it, but why do you still have the passion to keep making the work? Yeah, Reggie Watts never blew up. He's an amazing, funny, and musical person doing his own thing that matches nothing anybody's ever done.
Brownsville girl, with your Brownsville curls, a teeth like pearls, shining like the moon above.
Murder City Devils are back out on tour. Yeahs are back out on tour. Like, it's interesting how some of these bands have come back. They're coming back because they love what they do. They're not making a bunch of money, probably per se,
That theme of doing your own thing and just doing your own thing and because you want to do your own thing comes up a lot. And I think that's an important point to drill in on. There's actually a couple excerpts I want to read, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I've got two quotes. One of them is this: when you make art from a place of curiosity, you don't give a shit what others think. You're running with scissors and hoping you don't fall. You're rebelling. You're stepping away from the normies with faith in your ability to see differently. And I think that's, first of all, a wonderful sentiment. And it's really closely tied with this other question, which relates to the title of the book, Making It. Did I make loads of money? No. But did I make it as an independent artist, which is all I ever really wanted? Yes. So it's how you perceive your achievements and what brings you simple daily joy. For me back then, it was getting out of bed in my live work studio with my dog Pony, getting coffee at Lighthouse Roasters, working with other creatives, and having control over my life. Can you speak to these themes that you've already brought up, and I just read those quotes? Like, that's such a huge part of your work and the scene that you're documenting. That is the ethos, right?
Right. That last piece you read is like, yes, for me, all I wanted to be was running my own show, like not having people tell me what to do and creating what I wanted to create. And I think once I realized that, I started to look at myself even differently and like, yeah, you've lived on your own terms forever. And that is huge, and survived. I didn't meet my husband till I was 36 years old. So I was jamming and making it and surviving and taking care of myself and Pony and doing just fine. So, yeah, I think it's really looking at success out of the eyes of money, because that skews things really. Because money, as much as money is great and it helps you get places and get things done, it also it's just not important to me. I just don't have that drive. My drive was always to just be independent.
Well, and it's funny, like you were making it, but you're married and have a kid, but you're still making it. You know what I mean? Like you said, you stopped. You know what I mean? Like you're still making it.
Yeah.
I just this comes up a lot in interviews recently. This idea of like trusting yourself. The most creative people sometimes are the ones who don't brag about themselves, and it's so for some people it's a balance, right? Not being a total like jerk and like acting like you're better than everyone, but at the same time there's that like, no, I've got these photos, they're awesome, look at them. Like what would you tell musicians, photographers, anyone who's got a creative instinct but is like, oh, but it's not going to get me a record deal, so what's the point? Like what do you tell someone like that?
You have to have the drive and passion to tell your story. Like, you could have looked at all this photography and been like, that's okay. So how do I put it all together and make it into something desirable, interesting? And part of that for me was trusting telling my story, because the only story you can tell is your own.
Well, I want to read a quote and then set up my question. So you have an artist statement on your website, and you say, most of all, I want to show viewers the beauty in people and the things that they might otherwise ignore. In that sense, all my work is portraiture, an image that captures the essential personality or emotions of the subject, right? And you have this really beautifully articulate artist statement about what it means to be a photographer to you, right? And what we're kind of supposed to take. It brings me no joy to think about that in the context as well of like, everyone has the camera in their pocket now, right? Everyone has the phone. Have you had any thoughts about the way that having cell phones with cameras and video trivializes photography, especially in this music context? Are you crotchety about it? Are you excited by that? Like what is your take ultimately on like, as a music photographer, what is your take on that access that everyone has?
The last time I shot a band, it was in LA, and my cousin came into town and her son was playing in some rock band. And I was like, do you want me to bring a camera? And you had to pay $100 to bring your camera in and shoot at the club. And maybe that's an LA thing. I don't know, because I'm not out shooting bands in LA. Well, like I said in the book, when I left Seattle, I did not go to LA expecting to get a front row seat. So I'm not crotchety about it, I would say.
Sorry. That's not my words, not yours. Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's a good word. Very visual. I'm a historian. I am a collector. I am an editor. I am I make books. I have a point of view. I have my own style. And those things make me confident about the work I produce and where it's going or how I'm showing it. So that's just the attitude you have to have, and you got to be confident about how you're shooting. Now, kids today shooting digital, I don't know. I don't know how somebody shoots Death Cab for Cutie and has a different vibe unless they're with the band, right? But what makes this book intimate is I'm in small clubs. I'm not in these big places with huge jumbotrons behind them and giving an ambiance.
Most people were overjoyed. They took to their boats.
In the epilogue of the book, you kind of talk about leaving Seattle and going to LA. Not just kind of like, you talk about how a pony or dog died and that was kind of your sign to go. But there was the other aspect of it that I thought was really, I don't know if admirable is the right word, but like it really touched me, was that you you kind of, this is in your afterword of the book. You talk about kind of how it was time for you to go and that was okay. And also that the kids were all right. It's like this city, Seattle, like isn't the same as when I came, and that's a good thing. And I'm excited to see what the kids are going to do with it. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what you're talking about. I guess, can you talk a little bit about, again, like what led you go to LA in the first place? And, you know, you still clearly go back to Seattle from time to time, but like, you know, talk about that transition in your life and maybe just a word or two about Seattle's scene now. Like, how did the kids do?
Yeah, I mean, I just could tell it was changing, and I was in my 30s, and it's like, I don't need to be going out to shows at 11 o'clock at night. You know, it just, my whole energy had changed, and I wanted to finally try to make money, right? So I was trying to push into like marketing agencies and things like that and believe in myself in a different way, which for me was you know, as an artist and someone who shot portraiture, I was like, oh, do they want what I have? That was a kind of a big learning curve for me to believe in myself as a shooter, even though I'd been shooting for a long time, because now I was going into a corporate atmosphere and trying to prove myself. And do I have what they want, right? And so I felt like the scene was changing. I was changing. People were leaving. People, maybe the same guys weren't at the door, or I just didn't know as many people. So then going out wasn't as fun.
And just to be clear, like it's so much less about like, oh, Seattle sucks now. It's at all. That's not what you meant. It was more like, my personal life is transitioning, and what I need from my life is changed. I'm kind of in that period of my life that you were describing in the book, where it's like, this isn't, not that it's not for me anymore, but like, it's not as much a priority, and I don't feel bad about that, you know, because I think there was a time when it's like, oh my God, I'm not going to shows and staying up past 10 o'clock. Sorry, 9 o'clock. And I'm like, oh my God, am I boring? And it's like, well, I don't know. My wife loves me and my kid's really cool. Like, you know,
well,
and I still,
it's a shift in, what is important, where my priorities are. And that, you know, when you're single, you are out all the time. You have to, because you are looking for community and family, and it comes outside of the home because you're single. So now once you have a family, you know, you have this core, and the love is like, oh, I love being at home with my family. I mean, for me, even moving back to New York was because I could have a dog, and I could have my car, and I could get a studio place, and I could drive around and have control of my world. And yeah, and I'll say, I'd be like, yep, I'm going to go home. I got a dog.
The very last thing we ask everyone always in our interviews for a deeper listen is, what is another, usually we say band or artist, that is inspiring you right now, or that you're just really into?
Yeah, I am a huge Gossip fan and Murder City Devils fan. Like, if we go back to the Northwest, like, I always love what they're doing.
I see her walking like a cat. I said I wish that I could walk like that. Me and her in time going boom, boom, boom. She goes boom, swagger, swagger, boom, boom, swagger, boom, 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 swagger, swagger, boom, boom, swagger, boom, 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 swagger, swagger, boom, boom, swagger, boom, boom, boom.
You were so fun to talk to. I really appreciate you making time to talk about your book and all the magical moments you lived in Seattle.
Oh, it's so fun. I want to share this with everybody, and I want everybody to feel the love of what I put into this book, because it is a love letter to Seattle. It is a love letter to everybody who let me into a show, who managed the band, who was in the band, who let me shoot them, it's to all the bouncers, you know? It's for all of them. It's for all of us who were there at that time, and I hope they feel the love.
Bootsy's new book of photography, Making It, comes out November 28th, but you can get a copy sooner by attending one of her live events. You can learn more about those events and the book itself by going to her website, bootsyholler.com. And that was a deeper listen. And just like you, we're out here just trying to make it in our own way. And for KEXP, you can help us make it by leaving a review of this podcast, or better yet, talking about this show with someone you know in real life. And of course, the most important way that you can help KEXP is by donating money to the station. Everything we do is listener powered. That's why we say that so proudly every time we say KEXP. And you are KEXP. And please, if you're not already supporting the station, consider becoming an amplifier now with a $6 a month donation at kexp.org/deeper. Thank you to my colleagues Janice Headley for web design and to Matt Ogaz for audio mastering. I'm Roddy Nickbor. Next week's The Fall Fun Drive will have a bit of a special episode for that next week, and special for a lot of reasons. Hope you'll join us. Take care.